Hi, GCAP. I'm Jay.
And I'm Cecile. We're here to talk to you about making the zone, online events, and the experience of being somewhere.
I'm a programmer and a designer based in Sydney. Primary interest is narrative games, but recently I've developed an interest in social games as well.
I'm a graphic designer, zine maker, and game designer living in Melbourne. My artistic work often revolves around the themes of memory, connections, and belonging.
Before we continue, I want to acknowledge that I'm talking to you from the unceded lands of the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation.
And I want to acknowledge that I am talking to you from the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
We're here to talk to you about using game technology to deliver more exciting and engaging online events using the case study of our experiences making online spaces, we've been calling zones, for Freeplay in 2020 and 2021, and the Researching Gamemaking Workshop in 2020. In total, we've now made 4 zones.
And there's going to be more happening. Parallels 2021 is coming, and we're, I guess, working on a zone for that.
As like any of you who attended GCAP or any conference last year will recall, after around February 2020, most in-person events didn't happen due to the pandemic. Events were cancelled, postponed, or moved online. For events that moved online, the organisers had to work out how best to adapt to online, and often at very short notice.
Yeah, I feel like last year really was like the cornerstone for people taking online events seriously. And it ended up becoming like the only way to make things happen. So like it was like, oh shit, we have to do this. And I guess like online events and webinars like have been a thing before, but obviously like people always preferred like meeting in person for conference and convention and such because it's just like it's more than just the event, it's like everything around that. So yeah, it was like a really interesting transition. One event that was forced to move online was Freeplay Independent Games Festival. So let's talk about Freeplay. It is an event that means a lot to me.
But I hope that most of you would know Freeplay, as its home is right here in Melbourne. Freeplay is the world's longest running independent games festival. They're like night markets were a highlight of Freeplay for us both. They're like a mix of games party, community art fair, art installation, and dance party, and they're all like set up in different like venues, which are like decorated to feel really magical.
Yeah, the night market really is this really cool event that is for mostly for casual hangouts and is mostly about meeting up with familiar faces. And it's like this kind of no stress, like everyone's relaxing type of event, which is why it's my favorite part of Freeplay.
Yeah, like I'm same here. Like for me, like friends that I made at the 2018 Freeplay Night Market have gone on to be friends that I look forward to like meeting up with again, each Freeplay and Games Week.
Mhm.
After that, it's been like the start of really beautiful friendships.
Yeah. It's just nice because you also get the time to like actually talk to people, which is really cool.
Yeah, like you're not squishing in like chats between like talks. And
Yeah, exactly. It's really nice.
one of the like rays of light over the past year have been the creative ways that people have like responded to this moment. How people have found like new ways to connect and be together. Like Arcade is an art gallery for video games located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the US. It's run by like games academics Paolo Pedicini and like Heather Kelly, who are both at Carnegie Mellon, and like graphic designer Tenley Schmieder. Like's monthly shows were like another event that the pandemic disrupted. Paolo responded by creating a lo-fi networked recreation of Like Arcade, effectively like demaking the IRL art gallery into a browser-based mini MMO.
Yeah, I found out about Like because I got invited to exhibit one of my games to, I think it was the first event they held in the online space, and I got to show up to the opening event, I guess, online, and I was immediately struck with how fun and memorable it was, and like the thing that really just impressed me was how the space lent itself to inside jokes and absurd comedy, which would, go on to like inspire us a lot for our work.
Yeah, like that would have been so cool to be at the very first opening of Like Online.
Mhm.
And like for me, like I don't think I found about it until like Palo like went and open source the code base to Like Online. And like that code base that he open sourced would go on to be the framework that would use to build the zone.
Yeah. That's well. I feel like I always thought that you were there. I just like put you in my memories. I was like, yeah, Joe was there. Um,
I guess I was there spiritually.
Spiritually, yeah, absolutely.
So in like previous years, like Freeplay had streamed online talks in addition to the in-person conference. So like it felt like Freeplay was already in quite a good spot for doing a festival online. But thinking of the night markets, I was kind of sad about what would be like a missing from an online version of the festival. So when I saw like online was open source, I saw an opportunity to try and like capture some of the magic digitally. As like Cecile mentioned, like their game, like Continental Drift had been part of the opening like online exhibition. So I asked them what they thought of it and ran this kind of idea of like an online night market. And like Cecile liked the concept. So then I pitched that to the director of Freeplay, Chad Toprak.
Yeah, I was really interested in making our own little like space because I thought it was a neat experience to bring to folks in Melbourne because we were just dealing with like a whole lot of I don't know, like I think it was like pre like long lockdown, but still like we just felt it a lot. And yeah, like I thought the vibes matched and it's actually really interesting to me that like Continental Drift was the one that was my game that was featured in like online because it is like a game about like how to find like about spaces and belonging and that sort of stuff and like I like that connection between my obsession with spaces and like inhabiting a space and then you and your like attachment to the night market and trying to like I'll be like oh we should actually make this happen online and I think it just was like a kind of a match made in heaven in that sense.
Yeah, like it's kind of like amazing how well it sort of like it turned out that we were both people who were like super into this
Yeah.
idea, which I don't I don't think I entirely realized how well like we'd both kind of work for this project at the start.
Yeah.
As we worked together, the sort of idea of an online night market morphed into the Freeplay Zone, and the like zone ended up becoming the virtual venue for the festival in 2020.
In my art for the zone, I evoked DIY venues and the magical spaces that kind of free play events are usually held in. And it all kind of came from this nostalgic impulse, looking back fondly on past events in the pre-pandemic world, and all the things that I want to do. But it also has this like utopian like impulse, and just trying to create a virtual space where we could all be together in a time where we just couldn't do that in person. And it's all about like remembering all those like little details that made those spaces special to me, I guess.
Yeah, like we were like really trying to sort of like channel the feeling that these spaces had and that they gave us. And I think like a lot of people were also sort of missing this side of free play and and these kind of like Melbourne art game events because we found that the like community just like embraced a zone in a really lovely way and really got into it, which was wonderful.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit of the about the aesthetics of the zone. So like I said before, it is like the capturing the essence of Melbourne arts game events, and it's all about these like warehouses, and like there's usually like milk crates and like fairy lights and like neon lighting, cozy but kind of cool like vibe, I guess. And it's just like I feel like a lot of the events that I first went to when I first moved to Melbourne were like events like this that felt very punk-ish, I guess you could say, and it just like really left an impression on me. And I was like, oh, like that. This is like the kind of thing that I want to make. And I think it is like a mix of aesthetics from around me, like that are local to me, but at the same time, it is like a very memory-based art style, I guess, or like inspiration. That's how I feel about the art. And yeah, it's just a very lovingly rendered little warehouse that I made.
Yeah, like it's just like a like perfect sort of like I'm capturing of like how those spaces kind of feel.
Mhm.
Like I'm sitting around on milk crates.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just like fairy lights everywhere.
absolutely. It's like this very specific memories and stuff.
It's like in terms of how this like all sort of works like technically, like consists of a number of rooms, which are essentially these like single screen kind of environments, and like each room is basically like a separate chat that includes all of the players that are currently in that room. So like for the zone, it consisted of a number of rooms, including the outside, like the sort of street front, before you go into the warehouse space, the screening room, which is where the users could gather to watch talks, and like the backyard was kind of like where you'd sort of hang out in between talks, or if you're sort of taking a break from listening to talks, you could hang out there. And then like an exhibition room, which is where like users could play games which are like related to the festival.
I think from the get-go, I had this very clear idea of what elements I wanted to represent in each room. I think you can see in these drawings, like, oh, there's like clearly some cables hanging off like the ceiling, and that's like fairy lights and some stairs and some hidden nooks and crannies. There's this like bonus secret exhibition room that I included, and I think the idea was that we wanted the rooms to connect to each other in like sometimes realistic ways to make it feel like an actual space, but also sometimes not. And this bonus room would be like kind of like hidden away. And we wanted to experiment with this concept of a virtual space and what things you can do in them that you can't in physical spaces. And it's like we have all these possibilities, so why not just try to play with that idea?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting sort of finding that balance between what you can do in real life and what you can do virtually. For instance, a lot of the Zone fans always want to climb the tree, and we're like, this wouldn't be a good idea in real life, and it might not be a good idea in the Zone either.
Hmm. But yeah, but they keep asking for it.
It won't stop. Like outside was something that we followed like including, and I think actually that like having like an outside is quite important. Like it helps to sort of establish the like virtual space as like a destination, as somewhere you go to. Like for this talk, like Cecile came up with a subtitle, the like experience of being somewhere, and I think like outside is a key part of sort of selling this online space as somewhere. Um, if you think of like the concept of the magic circle from theories of play, where you sort of cross a line where the rules of the outside world no longer apply, instead the rules of the game apply. The like outside room is kind of like where you go and sort of like cross this line and enter the magic circle of the zone. And one thing we sort of really kind of found that sort of like fit with this was that as soon as users had like entered the other rooms, they'd rarely like return to the outside room because they were inside the magic circle. And like the main time we'd see users return to the outside was like when they were saying their goodbyes. As it was just at the point where they were going to like cross back over the edge of the magic circle and return to their real lives. And like as part of this, like in one user even like role played like hailing a taxi as though like they were sort of outside and waiting for their ride to pick them up to go home.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, there was like taxi, and I'm pretty sure like I think we were talking about this, but I'm pretty sure someone was also like having a smoke break or something. And yeah, it's really fun to just like see people play with that idea of like inside outside, and yeah, it's just a really, and it's just like a good way to establish, you know, like a space and be like, okay, this is what it looks like. This is the first thing that they see, and you want that to be kind of like striking in that sense.
Yeah, like it really just like sets the vibe, sets the tone for the whole space.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the screening room combined a like room with a YouTube embed. And this allowed festival attendees to watch free play talks with other users in the zone. And like often like watching a live stream, you don't always have the sense of being part of an audience, but with the zone, and like you could see all the other people in the audience with you, and you could also read people's reactions to the talk as you were all like watching it together and share your own with them. So you really had the sense with like when you were watching a talk in the zone that it was a shared activity that you were partaking in together.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting and funny because this wasn't even part of our initial plan with the night market. Yeah, we were like, oh, it would be nice as a stretch goal, and it ended up being like a staple of the space. And yeah, we just thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could just make it work, and we just made it work, which was really good. The backyard, this was a space for socializing and relaxing, and it helped to keep the screening room focused on the festival programming by having a space where people could just, hang out, vibe, and pretend they were outside with friends. And this was kind of like, I guess personally, as the art director of the zone, like kind of my baby in a way, because I just wanted that I just wanted to convey this feeling of getting like going outside after being indoors for a while on a chilly like wintry night. And you kind of like feel, oh, it's a bit nippy, but it's nice because there's a fire pit or something, and it's just like it's such a like specific feeling that I wanted to like invoke with this art, and like I'm hoping that it translated quite well. Yeah, I'm really, really proud of the backyard. And it was also like inspired by Like's original space also had this backyard. And I was like, oh, that's such a good idea. So like it ended up being like this classic zone element.
Yeah, yeah. Like I feel like in one way in which the sort of like in zone kind of backyards have really sort of like elevated this sort of idea of the like backyard is that one is kind of sort of quite flat, but then in the zone backyards, like you've got the tree, you've got like the skyline of Melbourne, like there's so much atmosphere in the zone backyard. And yeah, like it really sort of like evokes that kind of time of being like of being outside, and it's a bit cold. Also, like you're just having such a good time with your friends that you don't want to go inside. You're going to just huddle around the fire and enjoy hanging out. And like the backyard also provided everyone like a virtual opportunity to touch grass.
I love that joke. It's so funny. All right.
Um, so we'd like originally had much more ambitious plans. We'd started off talking about building a whole night market, but sort of like a lack of time kind of forced us to scope down to something more minimal and focused. And I think this actually kind of worked in our favor because sort of later trying like other online spaces, I found that when they use a larger space, it would often make it less social because people would be more interested in kind of exploring the space rather than like interacting with the other users as much. And also because people were spread out at this wider space, you wouldn't also achieve this kind of critical mass that you need for these group conversations and to like start happening and be fun.
Both Jay and I visited the Amaze Festival's online space as well when it happened. It's like this like kind of massive 3D venue with like a lot of like it was like it's just an extremely cool building, but it definitely was like quite a different experience, obviously, to like our zone experience. And I think like a lot of it stems from like different goals. I feel like, at first, like we definitely thought, oh, it would be nice to have like a place to explore and stuff. And then like because again like mentioned like of time restraint and stuff like that, we just couldn't make that happen, so we ended up focusing a little bit more on just like smaller spaces and getting conversations going, while like Amaze is more about like exploring a space and like occasionally chatting with people, where maybe the chat feature wasn't as important, which is like totally fine. I think that works for the kind of space that it was. And I think like it was really fun to kind of compare the two in a way that is like, oh, these are like different ways, different executions of similar values in a way, because I do think that Amaze and Freeplay kind of have this similar, maybe aesthetic, maybe attitude. And yeah, it was really interesting to see, and it was just like a lot of fun to learn as well after like this sort of, oh wow, this is a thing that people can do. It's really cool, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like it was really sort of fascinating comparing like what they did for a maze space compared to like what we'd done to the zone and all these other different online spaces. And yeah, like I guess like in Freeplay Zone was almost like the more social side of a party, while then the like Amaze space really sort of led into the like party inside of a party. So people were like firing off confetti and jumping around and flying around. It was,
Yeah.
two very different experiences, but
Yeah, it kind of feels like two sides of the same coin in a way, though, and I think that's really, really cool.
so like in Freeplay as a festival, like has really strong values. It sort of champions unconventional, experimental, and personal game making, supports marginalized creators, and it aims to foster a supportive community and make game spaces more welcoming. Telecom Zone needed to reflect that. So before, or like users like entered the zone, we showed an acknowledgement of country and included a statement of like solidarity with like Black Lives Matter, which was based on the one that Chat had like introduced each talk at Freeplay with. If like we found that this like set the right tone for the space, like users felt that the like zone was not just any online space, but it was like specifically a Freeplay online space.
When I was making the art for this, the pink room that you can see on the screen, I was like, yeah, I need to make like a large space to exhibit things. And then I was adding the details, and I just wanted to emulate spaces that are frequent in Melbourne, which are like DIY spaces, LGBT friendly events. And, naturally, like I just wanted to include, the rainbow flag, the trans flag, and the Aboriginal flag in the space because it just was like, duh. Like I just didn't question it at all. I was like, yeah, I mean, this is like a realistic detail for like the kind of space that this would be, which was really like, it was just such a natural thing. I didn't even like really think hard about it. It was just like, oh yeah, like this makes sense. Done. And then later, like during talks, users would express solidarity with the causes they believed in, like Black Lives Matters, trans rights, like all these things, like chanting that stuff, like whenever like it came up on the screen. And yeah, in 2020, I feel like it was easy to feel really disheartened and faced with injustice and disconnected from others who could have felt the same. And I feel like the zone ended up being this space to be around others who also cared and like visibly cared. And I think like that was just like a really nice, like, dare I say, wholesome experience. Yeah, like it was just really nice to see it, and I don't know, I'm just really proud of this.
Yeah, like I think like sort of having the kind of community like come together in the zone in that way was really, really special. And it was really great that it could be a space for people to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, just amazing. Awesome.
During like Melbourne International Games Week, Freeplay like holds a showcase of experimental, unique, and personal games. So it was still not safe to gather in person for like Games Week 2020. So all of the events for that week were held online. We like contacted Chad to see about making a zone for parallels, and he liked the idea.
Yeah. In 2019, Parallels had been held in Melbourne's Capitol Theatre on Swanston Street. So Chad asked us like to make Parallels Zone a recreation of the Capitol, and we said yes. It was really, to me, as the artist, it was really a challenge to recreate in low-fi pixel art all the details and the stuff, that the intricate, I guess, architecture of the Capitol, but I think I did a good job. And we don't see it on the slide, but the entrance to this venue is on Swanston Street, which is like one of the main, like iconic streets of Melbourne. And I think that also felt really nostalgic and wistful in a way. And because like I feel like I hadn't been on Swanston Street for like months by the time I was making this like art, and like yeah, I was just like, you know what? Time to go full nostalgic on this. And we really wanted to like, tug on people's heartstring because we also like included like some audio of like ambient like sounds at the entrance. And it's just like, oh my God, it's just like we're there. So Parallel Zone, I think it was a success. Like so many people came. It was amazing. And like the sheer number of people there was really honestly almost quite overwhelming. And yeah, it was just really chaotic, and it was an interesting experience for sure because you're like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah, it was. really overwhelming, but yeah, like looking back on it, it was pretty like incredible, the like number of people who showed up, and just the like sheer sort of energy and excitement everyone had about all of the speakers and their games. So it
Yeah.
was really special.
It was really special. Like it felt like while like the Freeplay 2020 zone was like more of a because it's like a week long thing, you know, like you don't have like everyone at the same time. Like this is just one night, like 2 hours in one night. So it's like everyone was there. So it's like a completely different type of event. And yeah, it was just like unreal.
Yeah, it really was. Quite like early in 2020, people start talking about Zoom fatigue. Like everything had moved online, and everything had become like a video call or a live stream, and people were feeling tired of them. People also like humorously contrasted the experience of video calls with video games. At the start of 2020, before we started having lockdowns and sort of like things like that, like you can see like Andy like quite like I'm skeptical of why you'd want to hang out online. But then we get a few more months into 2020, and by like in May, you've got like Vivian who was like extolling the virtues of like Red Dead Redemption campfire meetings, even though there's a risk of wolf attacks.
Turns out hanging out in a space with your friends and also you have a gun is fine. Australian Games academic Brendan Keogh would also comment how essential being embodied was for natural conversations, which I agree with. And yeah, this very much aligned with what we'd experienced with the zone. And through these, you know, I feel like our avatars in the zone are like extremely minimal, lo-fi, and there's no like facial expressions or whatever. It's all about like the body language in a way. I think that like actually conversely, it kind of gave these people this surprising sense of being there, I guess, and because you can move around freely while chatting and all that stuff. And yeah, like Brendan later contacted us after Freeplay about the zone, and he asked us to make one for him.
Yeah, this was pretty incredible to after sort of building a kind of like festival space to then build a like academic conference space. And so like over the years, like Brendan has been doing some really important research into game making in Australia, like helping to create a more nuanced version, like a view of who is making games here and their concerns. If you've been going to GCAP for like a few years, like you might like remember Brendan's closing keynote from GCAP 2019, talking about the findings of this research. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend looking it up. It paints some more like a nuanced portrait of game creation than people just talking about how much money the games industry makes. As part of this research, Brendan was planning an online workshop around game making and wanted to have a zone as part of the workshop. Brendan had designed the workshop as an asynchronous conference featuring speakers from around the world. He wanted it to be an alternative to conferences which happened as exhausting all-day Zoom calls. So instead, the workshop would feature pre-recorded talks, which could be watched when best for participants, a Discord for asynchronous conversation, brief Zoom catch-ups, and the zone for more informal hangouts. With like an academic context, we experimented with features which were less playful and a bit more kind of information driven, such as the tab for reading the abstract for the current talk, which you can see on the like an upmost screenshot there.
When I was making the art for this, I was basically asked to translate QUT building, which was kind of an interesting experience because I've never been to Brisbane, I've never been to Queensland, and I had to convey like these completely different vibes to Melbourne sort of, like, aesthetic, and instead I had to focus on what makes a university building and drawing jacarandas. Which was like a really like refreshing kind of like experience because I was like looking up all these images and I was like, oh wow, you can feel the humidity.
Yeah, like it's pretty like incredible to, I guess, sort of try and be sort of like nostalgic for somewhere like you've never been.
Yeah. So there's an exhibition side to the conference, obviously, and it consisted of 4 rooms displaying quotes from Brennan's interviews with over 150 Australian game developers located both around the world and around the country. And Brendan previously had presented this on this work in many places, including many academic conferences, GDC, and the closing keynote at GCAP 2019.
Yeah, so like for me, like adding all of the quotes into the exhibition was one of my favorite parts of making the zone, is getting these quotes into the right sort of format for the zone. I really got to kind of like sit with all of these creators, like sharing their quite vulnerable personal feelings about making games. And that was really nice. Got to kind of like contemplate all these different thoughts.
Yeah.
And before free play this year, like Cecile suggested, we contact Chad again about sort of making another zone for free play 2021. Initially, the festival was going to be a hybrid festival with a mixture of in-person events and online talks. But there was an outbreak again, and that forced the festival to go entirely online. And so the zone moved from being a throwback to the previous year's festival to a central part of the festival once again.
This year, Freeplay collaborated with Australian literary magazine VoiceWorks to launch their Geist issue, and people watched the launch from the zone, and they could also visit a special tailor-made classroom, complete with a haunted cupboard, where they could read different pieces from recent VoiceWorks issues. And the classroom's art was actually inspired by a previous venue for Freeplay's Night Market, which is Siteworks, which is a repurposed school. And I think like I just like this connection, I guess, between like all these venues that revolve around each other, I guess, and they're all like included in this like the zone universe.
Almost like the sort of free play zones are the sort of like greatest hits of all of the spaces that like free play and Hover Garden parties have been held into and all just brought together. One of my favorite things about the like VoiceWorks collaboration was seeing like a non-games audience engage with the zone and sort of seeing them sort of like really like embrace it and enjoy being in the virtual space together. Like I think sort of prior to this, it was not necessarily clear like how like a non-games audience would react to it, but it turned out they really embraced it and loved it, which was wonderful.
What have we learned from the zone? So, to, I guess, recap some of the things that we learned from the zone, our learnings, including an exterior or outside to a virtual space, usually helps to make it feel like more of a destination and helps establish the boundaries of the events, like, you know, inside, outside, in the event, outside of the event, all that stuff.
As well as that, like event spaces can express the spirit and the values of the event, like the zone aim to express the values of free play.
And smaller spaces were often better, and they helped reach the critical mass of people to make the space more social and lead to lively conversations, in jokes, and absurd humor.
Along with that, we found that people enjoy playfulness in event spaces, that is like a reason to be there and something that makes it a bit more fun.
And also, creating a sense of being part of an audience is important because this was just not a video that you watch, but it is an event that you experience with other people.
And like another thing we found was that like zone screenshots were like very, very like tweetable, which really helped to like introduce the festival to other people who might not have otherwise heard of it and created further like engagement for the festival.
Yeah, absolutely. It turns out it's just like the real free play.
Yeah, that's not a fake screenshot. That was actually said, I think, by him maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was, yeah. No, we faked it
We
actually.
would never. Independent game festivals, like Free Play, do an incredible amount to foster community and encourage grassroots and experimental game creators. They provide early recognition and acknowledgement for up-and-coming creators like House House, who won the Free Play Award in 2015 for their first game, Push Me Pull You. Freeplay then had House House show Untitled Goose Game at Parallels 2017 before it went on to worldwide success. That's an extreme case, but for another example, see David Cribb, aka Celestia, who had a nomination in 2019 before winning the Freeplay Award in 2020 for A Hand with Many Fingers. Since then, David has won a Mazes Humble New Talent Award, which awards the winner funding to create a game published under Humble's Humble Originals banner. See also Grace Bruxner and Thomas Bowker, who went from early recognition in the Freeplay Awards to forming Worm Club and creating the iconic Frog Detective series with a third entry, Corruption at Cowboy County, eagerly awaited by many.
Personally, I owe a lot to Freeplay and the people behind Freeplay. As an initial outsider and newcomer to games in Melbourne, Chad was the first person to give me the opportunity to share my work with more than just my friends, and I was astonished with the warm welcome I was given upon entering the community. To me, the Zone is a form of giving back to this community. Every year, I am surprised at how hard the team at Freeplay works to provide the best experience for folks from all across the industry, from hobbyists like me to developers with decades of professional experience. All this on a minimal budget and limited support from the industry at large. If there's one thing you have to take away from this talk, it's the importance of grassroots experimental games culture in the larger ecosystem of game makers. Now, more than ever, in this pandemic where the arts are first thrown under the bus, as an organisation or as an individual, you should support these festivals like Freeplay, because without them, a huge part of what makes this community and culture truly unique, diverse and talented goes away too. This may sound a little bit cheesy, but I really do believe it.
So do I. We hope to see you all in like a parallel zone on Thursday, and one day hopefully see you all again IRL. Hopefully maybe at an in-person Freeplay and parallels next year. You can say for a bit of a kind of like a glimmer of hope. Here's some photos of Like Arcade. They've gone offline and returned to doing in-person events. Their September show was themed around roads and infrastructure. It actually featured an Australian game, like Need for Billion Speed, by Colonica and Jason from Ghost Pattern, who you may know from them like working on the upcoming Wayward Strand. Again, you can kind of see that kind of connection between people doing experimental work and then also doing like games that are going to be sold commercially, like Wayward Strand will be coming out on PlayStation, which we're both very excited for.
Yeah, stoked. Yeah, and on our side, I guess, like we're fostering a little arts games community on Discord, which kind of extends beyond Freeplay and Parallel Zone events. And yeah, I'm mostly daydreaming about IRL stuff for now. We don't know when things are going to open up again, hopefully soon. And yeah, like we said, we'll see you at some point. The Zone is going to be returning again for Freeplay Parallels this year. It is Thursday, the 7th, at 7 p.m. So that's fairly easy to remember, and do not miss it. We would love to see you in the Zone again for Parallels. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to our experiences making the Zone. If you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like to discuss, please contact us via email or on Twitter.
We'd like to thank Chad and Brendan for their trust and belief in these projects. We'd also like to thank all the Zone fans whose screenshots we borrowed for this presentation. Thank you all for documenting these special moments and for sharing them with us.
We've included a few links on this slide if you'd like to learn more about the Zone. There's the talk that we did, which is kind of like a post-mortem of the Zone at Freeplay 2021. There's a thread that I made on Twitter reflecting on, some choices that I make with the Zone and like what it means to me. Jay did a talk at New Zealand GDC 2021, also about the Zone. And there is Brendan's thread about the Researching Gamemaking Workshop, which is also extremely interesting to read. So, if you're curious, absolutely look at these. And yeah, that's it for us, I think.
Thanks for listening and see you in the Zone.
See you in the Zone.